Dear descendants, today you are celebrating a unique day. We know our time is interesting, but yours is much more so. We believe that you have perfectly equipped our blue planet, colonized the moon, landed on Mars, that you are continuing the exploration of outer space that we, people of the first 50 years, have begun, and that your ships are sailing across the galaxy. We believe you are holding talks about scientific and cultural collaboration with representatives of other galaxies, alien civilizations. We believe that the work that our fathers and grandfathers started 50 years ago, and which we share, you will finish and bring to victory. This is just one of the messages found in one of the many time capsules unearthed across several post-Soviet nations in 2017. Written in 1967, 6 years after Yuri Gagarin, the son of a milkmaid and a carpenter, became the first man to orbit the Earth in outer space, and 4 years after Valentina Tereshkova, a former textile factory worker and amateur skydiver, became the first and only woman to go on a solo space mission, this time capsule message speaks of a hopeful future unknown to those of us who actually lived through 2017 and who are still alive today in 2025, 8 years after the unearthing of these time capsules. We haven't colonized the moon, aliens don't want to talk to us, spaceships are not sailing across the galaxy, the Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore, but for a brief moment in history, there was hope that a better future full of scientific advancement and discovery was coming in 50 short years. That someday human cooperation and progress would allow us to reach beyond the stars towards a new tomorrow full of hope and new knowledge. That future generations would finally reap the rewards of Soviet socialist construction in a way that seems mostly unreachable to many of us today, especially given the fact that living standards are going down in 90% of countries, including the US. This palpable feeling of hope for the future is present in a lot of Soviet science fiction media, particularly the 1981 Soviet animated film Тайна третьей планеты, or The Mystery of the Third Planet, which we'll be talking about today. Directed by Roman Kachanov and produced by Soyuz-Multfilm, Mystery of the Third Planet features gorgeous animation, a very wholesome and hopeful yet thrilling storyline, and probably one of the best soundtracks ever. Like, not even the best soundtrack in an animated film, just one of the best soundtracks ever. Plus, it's got a model of a good relationship between a girl and her dad, which is weirdly uncommon in American media. I actually can't think of an American cartoon with that theme. Can you? Let me know. Тайна третьей планеты, like a lot of Soviet sci-fi films aside from Stalker and Kinzaza, paints an optimistic picture of a future created by socialist construction, much like the vision expressed in that 1967 time capsule message. You can tell a lot about how a society views itself and what goals it's striving towards based on how they envision the future. So today, I wanted to talk about how Mystery of the Third Planet, Тайна третьей планеты, I'm going to use them interchangeably, portrayed Soviet predictions for the future while conveying socialist values like the glorification of science, the heroism of the working class, and friendship and solidarity. Plus, Mystery of the Third Planet is one of my favorite Soviet cartoons that I grew up with. But first, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Think about a time when a company you trusted announced a data breach potentially involving your personal information. It's pretty terrifying thinking that someone could have access to your personal sensitive data. Last year, there were many high-profile data breaches, and this year will likely be no different. Dell suffered a breach that exposed 3.9 million customer records, including sensitive personal information. Ticketmaster also experienced a massive breach, compromising over 560 million customer records. Most alarming of all, several months ago, National Public Data announced that they had suffered a major breach, potentially impacting every American. The incident compromised over 2.9 billion records used for background checks, including critical personal information such as full names, addresses, dates of birth, phone numbers, and most importantly, social security numbers. It's also been confirmed that the hackers responsible for this data breach released this sensitive information online for free. If you haven't been taking your personal information online seriously, now's the time to change that. You're more vulnerable than ever in today's digital landscape. That's where Aura comes in. Aura monitors your personal data, including your social security number, across billions of data points to alert you about potential identity theft, so you can feel secure online and ensure that your private data stays private. Thanks to Aura, I feel much safer online. They also provide up to $5 million in identity theft insurance in case the worst happens. Plus, Aura offers a multitude of other features to keep you safe online, including real-time alerts for data breaches, a VPN for secure browsing, data broker opt-out to stop companies from selling your personal information, an antivirus and safe browsing, financial fraud protection, and many more. You can get all of these amazing cybersecurity features in one app. at an affordable price. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/revolutionary to try 2 weeks for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video. Now back to the video. Тайна Третьей планеты starts off in the year 2181 with Alisa Selezneva and her dad, Professor Seleznev, flying in a small shuttle through a beautiful landscape full of futuristic buildings and plenty of greenery. They land and meet up with Zelyony, the pilot and captain of the ship, at a ship launching point. Zelyony says, "This won't end well. The Pegasus, which is the name of their ship, will never fly." Probably just because the robots responsible for putting stuff away are being a little incompetent, because, spoiler alert, the entire rest of the film involves them flying in that ship. A shuttle lands near them, an older lady gets out and asks if they're the ones that are going to get rare animals for a zoo, and then requests to see Captain Seleznev. He's like, "I'm Professor Seleznev," and she's like, "Right, that tracks." And Alisa is like, "And I'm Alisa!" And the lady is like, "That's not important at all," which is so funny. The shade. Anyway, this lady requests that Professor Seleznev deliver a small cake to her grandson Kolya because they'll be passing by Aldebaran, where Kolya is, on their travels. She brings out the small cake, to which Zelyony exclaims, "You call that a small cake?" It's actually really funny in Russian because you can make a word small by adding a suffix to it. So the word tort means cake, but she calls it a tortik, and the ik makes it small. Tortik. And then Zelyony's like, "Это называется тортик?" The lady asks, "Do you think he'll eat it alone or with his comrades?" She uses the word товарищи. Zelyony says he's not flying anywhere, and the lady's like, "Oh, but you are, because the Moscow Zoo needs new animals." What's interesting about this scene is that no money exchanges hands. There's no question of payment or contracts, either because that's too boring for kids, which, I mean, that's valid, or, as I like to believe, because they've achieved a post-scarcity, classless, stateless, moneyless society. A communist society where people do things for each other just because they want to help their fellow human beings, and just because they're capable. So they do. After the small prologue, Professor Seleznev, his daughter Alisa Selezneva, and Captain Zelyony set out from Earth aboard their Pegasus starship to go get some rare animals for the Moscow Zoo. When they get to the moon, Alisa says she's going to a sports match, and Zelyony says he'll come with her. Professor Seleznev is like, "Good, she can't go alone," and Alisa is like, "But I'm already 9. What could happen to me on the moon in the 22nd century?" Which, like, that's really the world that I want, where children can just roam the moon and be fine. And Zelyony is like, "You'd be a lot even in the quiet 20th century. Quiet 20th century? Wow, that's literally when the Russian Revolution of 1905 and the February and October revolutions of 1917 happened, the latter of which ultimately took the former Russian Empire from a backwards nation that was 85% peasants, most of whom were illiterate, then rapidly industrialized it, built up its productive forces, defeated the Nazis during World War II, and sent people to outer space, all within 50 years of its inception. Also, like, the Cold War was going on at the time this animated film was made, and I'd say all of that sounds pretty eventful. I guess the 21st century must have been a real mess in comparison. Damn, too real. While Seleznev is hanging out in a restaurant, his friend Gromazeka shows up and greets him. Gromazeka is an interesting character because one moment he's like, "Yay, I'm so happy to see my friend," but then gets so down about random things. He's prone to fits of melancholy, one might say. Like, he asks Seleznev if his daughter can talk yet, and Seleznev is like, "Yeah, too much, she's already finished the 2nd grade. And Gromazeka somberly says, "We're getting older and older," before swallowing an entire chicken and ordering 400 drops of valerian and a salad to celebrate. The robot butler brings everything out, and Gromazeka is like, "I asked for 400 drops. This is 400 too." The robot is like, 400 drops. Everything is precise here. Gromazeka yet again slips into his melancholy, saying that everyone's always arguing with me. No one loves me. Seleznev is like, "What do you mean? Everyone loves you, Gromazeka." Which I think is so wholesome and so indicative of the socialist values of friendship and solidarity. Even if your friend is experiencing a bout of melancholy, you still love them, you still support them and want what's best for them, and you help them with reality testing when they make claims like, "No one loves me." "Hey buddy, I'm right here and I love you." I think that's great. This is so cute. Gromazeka suggests that Seleznev visit the Planet of the Two Captains, where he can visit the museum and read the diaries of famous Captains Kim and Burat to learn where to look for rare animals. During this entire interaction, Gromazeka feeds Seleznev salad with his hands and then licks the bowl. Don't you want a giant many-armed friend to feed you salad by hand? I do. This is the future communists want. Gramazyeka tells Seleznyov that he'll talk to his good friend, Dr. Verhovtsev, on this planet, and then Dr. Verhovtsev walks by. Gramazyeka yells to greet him, but Verhovtsev runs away and ignores him. Gramazyeka is very saddened by this, once again slipping into melancholy, and Seleznyov is like, maybe you just misrecognized him. Gramazyeka says, that's what 2 extra drops of valerian means. Alisa shows up and Gramazyeka asks if she's Seleznyov's baby. After Seleznov responds in the affirmative, Gramazyeka picks Alisa up and throws her around to greet her. Zelyony sees this and starts attacking Gramazyeka because he thinks he's just some random hooligan. So Gramazyeka takes Zelyony and hangs him on a spike by his spacesuit. Alisa asks him to let him down because he was just trying to help, and Gramazyeka's like, not a chance. Now he'll know not to attack great archaeologists. Then leaves, which, like, fair. You shouldn't just randomly attack someone or judge someone by their appearance. Someone can be massive and have many arms and be, kind of freaky looking, I guess, to a human, but might actually be a great archaeologist and a friend. You never know, especially in this world where there's been contact with aliens and not every sentient life form is going to be human-shaped. I mean, honestly, there's some good lessons here. Zelyony falls down and asks, what's the bad news now? He's, extremely pessimistic throughout this entire film, but everyone just kind of ignores it and doesn't allow him to bring them down. No one's really bothered by it, and they're all very accepting. Seleznov announces that they're going to the planet of the 2 captains. Alisa yells, glory to the captains! And Zelyony is like, this won't end well. The interesting thing about both Gramazyeka's melancholy and Zelyony's continued pessimism is also that they're not really treated like these negative traits to be eradicated with cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever. It's just how they are, and pretty much everyone accepts that that's how they are. No one is like, Gramazyeka, stop the melancholy, Zelyony, stop the pessimism. They accept their friends and comrades as they are and don't try to change them, which I think is so beautiful. Let me romanticize my melancholic solitude in peace. It's not a phase. I'm just a Capricorn. The team arrives at the planet of the 2 captains and meet Verhovtsev, who tells them about the captains, Kim and Buran, who traverse the entire universe in their spaceship, the Blue Seagull. Verhovtsev walks them inside the museum, and Seleznov asks to see the captain's diary so they know where to go to get rare animals. Verhovtsev hides under the bed, refuses to show them anything, and says, I don't know anything, I'm not flying anywhere. Very weird. Also, what's interesting about these captains that are so famous is that they're basically scientists. They're famous and have a museum dedicated to them specifically because they've traveled to all these different planets and observed the wildlife there, documented their observations, and contributed to humanity's understanding of the universe and the different life forms within it. Basically like space zoologists / explorers, kinda. Kim and Buran are glorified specifically because they have chosen to contribute to science, not for money or glory, because this is presumably a classless, stateless, moneyless society, but because of their thirst for knowledge and discovery. The fact that these captains are considered heroes in this film, who Alisa thinks are so cool, is also very much indicative of the general Soviet attitude towards science. From its inception, the Soviet Union strove to be scientific, promoting the ideal of science as a public profession or branch of civil service, supported by public funds and consciously serving social needs. In 1957, Soviet scientist A. Tapchiev wrote, V.I. Lenin paid great attention to scientific development, displaying truly paternal concern about Soviet scientists, about providing them with the most favorable conditions for their scientific work. Scientific progress wasn't just viewed as an end in itself, but also as a means of achieving a more fair and just society where everyone can prosper, their lives improved by new scientific and technological discoveries. Our heroes leave the museum and go to the planet Bluk, where 2 crying, very sad aliens fly up to them and tell them that someone has slain all the Gavarun birds, and then show a photo of who did it. Verhovtsev. Why would a museum director do that to all these birds? Which Alisa asks, and the aliens are like, how would we know? So I've seen the name Gavarun translated as a chatterbird, so if you want to know what Gavarun means, it's like from the same root as Gavarit, to speak, so it's a bird that talks. Seleznov runs into a friend, Navigator Basov, but has to cut their interaction short because he and Alisa see Verhovtsev peering through a window. They try to find him and ask the hotel front desk lady where Verhovtsev's room is, but they don't run into Verhovtsev. They just run into a round guy in what was supposedly Verhovtsev's hotel room, who tells them that actually this person left yesterday. Afterwards, Alisa and her dad go to look for new rare animals. Money is actually mentioned for the first time when Seleznov asks a balloon animal, how much does this bird cost? And the bird responds with, you jerk, I'm selling him! So, like, maybe they haven't fully achieved fully automated luxury space communism yet in this world, because occasionally there seem to be some transactions, but they're apparently pretty rare since they never actually occur in this film. It's like they kept money in just for this particular joke, Loki. Alisa and her dad encounter a tiger rat whose right tail is longer than its left, and then Alisa calls to him saying, "There's fish!" The professor says the aquarium is empty, and Alisa says, "They're invisible fish." Her dad says that can't be, but the fish's caretaker says it can. But not all believe it, then gives Alisa an invisibility cap. For free, yet again, no need for exchange of money. Then Alisa and her dad encounter a giant purple snail chasing after a colorful box on legs. She says this animal is an indicator. He understands everything, but doesn't speak, only changes colors. Then the snail asks, "Do you want me to smack him? He'll turn purple with polka dots." And the professor's like, no, that's fine. It'd be better if you sold him to us. I guess currency does exist. The snail says he doesn't want that, and Alisa asks, "What if you gifted him to us?" which the indicator wants. The snail hands him to them and says, "Go on and take him quickly before I change my mind," because, in this fully automated luxury space communist utopia, people just give away stuff for free because it's preferable to engaging in transactional relationships with other beings. I can't say human beings because there's other beings other than human beings here. Afterwards, Alisa and her dad run into a cow-like being, which one of the blue beings says is a sklis and isn't anyone's. Alisa is like, "Let's take him, I'll ride him to school." Zilone shows up, once again asking what's bad, and Alisa is like, "We found sklis!" And Zilone is like, he won't fit in the boat. And Alisa says, "Sklis, home." And the sklis cow thing lands on Zilone, who says that this is outrageous. And then he says, "If cows can fly, then there's nothing for me to do in the cosmos." Real. The team tries to find a Gavarun, and a blue guy comes out with a box telling them that he saved an injured one, but is scared to keep him because this person from Earth tried to buy this bird from him, and after he refused, the person said that he and the bird won't live. In the meantime, Verhovtsev is lurking nearby and watching the whole thing. What's he doing here? The blue guy gives the bird to Alisa and her dad, but on the way back to the ship, they're ambushed by scary dudes with guns. Seleuznov is like, "An ambush!" And Alisa is like, "A real one?" And Seleuznov is like, "Unfortunately," and puts out an SOS to Zilone, who apparently has disassembled the ship. So it's gonna be a while. But luckily, Navigator Basov is there to help them subdue these robots, which, by the way, Alisa takes on a whole robot by herself as a 9-year-old girl while Basov and Seleuznov deal with the other one together. Alisa is like, "Dad, hold on!" You know what's stronger than 2 grown men? A 9-year-old girl. Apparently. Then we find out that these ambushers are remotely operated robots. Not science being used for evil. Gasp! Why is Gramazeka's friend suddenly evil, suspicious as hell, and killing birds? Also, the fact that this guy is presented as super evil specifically for killing birds shows us the socialist value of environmental preservation. In the last few decades of the Soviet Union's existence, public ecological consciousness permeated Soviet society and guided each member in their dealings with land, water, and other natural resources. The Soviet Union also had nature reserves known as zapovedniki, which were somewhat modeled after national parks, but with a focus on scientific research, the first of which was established by Vladimir Ilyich Lenin in 1919. Also in the early 1970s, the USA and the USSR started a green race to see if socialism or capitalism was a better system for environmental preservation, with Nixon and Brezhnev even signing an agreement in 1972 calling for environmental cooperation. Is socialism better? I'm not gonna get into it though, this is like a whole other video. The team finds that this last living Gavarun is actually Captain Kim's and was sent to help the captains out as an SOS. The bird repeats the words of the captains themselves, telling them to go to the 3rd planet in the Medusa system. Alisa is like, "We have to go help," and Zilone is like, "That's dangerous, why don't we send a patrol ship from Earth?" But nah, they're in too deep now, and they gotta help their fellow humans. I mean, they know all the information, they've got this Gavarun, obviously they gotta help out. The round guy shows up again and attempts to trade a diamond turtle for the Gavarun, but the team won't give up this obviously important bird, plus the bird probably doesn't want it anyway. So this guy simply gives them the turtle for free. There's a lot of giving away stuff for free in this film. Oh, so you think you can just have communism and get everything for free? Well, apparently when it comes to rare animals, if you're pure of heart and love science, then yeah. How many animals would be given to you for free under fully automated luxury space communism? The round guy says, "Remember, my name is Visilchak U. We'll see each other again," and leaves. Visilchak U is translated as like Joker U, Jolly Man U, Jollier U, Merry Man U, some variation of Happy Guy U. Basically, he's happy. Allegedly, that's his name. The professor says, it's decided, we're going to the Medusa system. Elisa cheers, but then asks, oh, what about the cake? Zelyona is like, I warned you, but luckily, Navigator Basov is able to take the cake to Kolya's birthday on Aldebaran. The team obviously has to solve this weird mystery, and again, currency exchange is not mentioned at all. As before, there's no need for money or transactions. People just do things for each other because it's the nice thing to do, which makes sense when a classless, stateless, moneyless society, communism, is the goal of the ideology of the place where this film was created. Basov is going to Aldebaran already, and our heroes are busy with solving this mystery, so of course Basov is going to deliver the cake to Aldebaran for them. On their way to the third planet of the Medusa system, Team Elisa gets an SOS from planet Chiliziaka, saying that there's an epidemic. When requesting more info about this planet, the Pegasus computer says there's no plants, no water, no resources, populated entirely by robots. But there's an SOS, so of course they have to go there, because as good builders of communism, they gotta help their fellow beings, even if those beings are robots. Zelyona even says, we gotta go help, this time without hesitating or even trying to frame it as something bad. While on Chiliziaka, they run into a robot who can't move, but can talk. Sort of. The robot thanks them for coming, then glitches out. After Zelyona fixes the malfunctioning robot, who's so happy that he sings to thank him, and then greets the Gavarun, calling him a brave bird, we learn that the robots also helped this Gavarun, replacing his broken wing with a prosthetic, and that the robots started malfunctioning right after a man in a hat, Verhovtsev, visited the planet looking for the bird. Turns out he put diamond dust into the robot's oil. Although the robots are alive, just paralyzed and in need of new oil. They'll be fine, luckily. Once in the Medusa system, they pass the first planet and then land on the second one where they see the blue seagull and Captain Kim. Zelyona is happy that they no longer need to save anyone, but once the team steps out of their spaceship, they see that it was just a mirage, projected by the stones on the ground. The Gavarun again tells them to go to the third planet. Zelyona says, birds can't count, and Elisa is like, but can captains? And Captain Zelyona is like, they can. And how? Elisa says, then everything's correct. So of course they set off for the third planet. The team arrives at the amazingly beautiful third planet. So beautiful, in fact, that Zelyona says, it's beautiful here. Trouble is coming. Elisa says, nothing will happen to us here. Man is tsar over nature. And her dad is like, except animals don't know that. They're illiterate. Immediately after, a giant bird swooshes by Zelyona and Selesnyov. So Selesnyov tells Elisa to not take a step away from the ship. And then in the next scene, Elisa steps away from the ship and gets kidnapped by said bird. Oopsie. Zelyona and Selesnyov go to rescue her and are obviously successful, and luckily Elisa is totally fine. She made friends with the bird's babies and had a fun time with them. Selesnyov is like, why did you leave the ship like a small child? Elisa says, she went to look for the captains with the Gavarun, and Zelyona says, there's no captains here. Oh, that's funny. Then how is it that Elisa found a piece of the blue seagull ship in the nest? Huh? They meet up with the Gavarun, who leads them to a field of mirror flowers. They take some to their ship, finding that once they've been plucked, they show what they've seen in reverse. They find that Verhovtsev was once again on this planet, along with Veselchak. The Gavarun knocks on the ship to share a message he received from Captain Kim, who is also somewhere on the same planet, and as Elisa is letting him in, we hear a crash. They go to the ship and see that the diamond turtle has shattered all the mirrors. And then they learn that it's a spying device and a tracker. The team flies back to the field of mirrors, presuming that it'll be safer there, but they find that they're all gone. As they land, the ground swallows them up, and suddenly they're underground, caught in a trap. But then they see that the blue seagull is also underground with them. Verhovtsev and Veselchaku capture Selesnyov and Zelyona. Elisa turns invisible with her invisibility cap, and avoids getting caught, and even knocks over Veselchaku, who lets go of the Gavarun. Verhovtsev tells him to stop falling, and Veselchaku says, I didn't fall, Chief. I was dropped. Я не упал, chef. Меня уронили. And Verhovtsev is like, oh, I'll drop you so you won't get up, and holds a gun up to his chin, which I think shows us that any ideology that isn't built on solidarity and friendship is doomed to fail, as it lacks the necessary component of solidarity and friendship to hold people together and prevent them from attacking each other. Like, it's clearly a major contradiction of the space pirate ideology. How are you gonna work together if you can't even trust each other? Elisa escapes from this underground lair with the Gavarun and finds Captain Buran with Verhovtsev. In the meantime, the space pirates threaten to kill Selesnyov and Zelyony if Captain Kim doesn't come out of the Blue Seagull and give them his absolute fuel formula. I don't know why in a post-scarcity society space pirates don't have access to this fuel formula, but I don't know, whatever. I guess it's because they're evil bird killers who threaten other living beings that are generally jerks. We are not fueling your space crimes. Go make your own fuel. Captain Kim, who was also trapped underground by these space pirates, is like, wait, no! Veselchak gives him a minute to talk, and he basically explains how the pirates trapped him to get this absolute fuel formula. Kim jumps out of his ship, picks up Veselchak, throws him at Verkhovtsev, and shoots and melts his gun. He's just melting everyone's guns. No need for violence here, just ruin the enemy's weapons so they can't engage in violence. Buran, the other Verkhovtsev, and Alisa show up and surround the space bandits. The real Verkhovtsev rips off the fake's face. He's actually a weird blue worm underneath who takes a pill and kills himself. But Veselchak is like, he's faking! He's a glut! Kill him! And Kim is like, why would we kill him? Let people see the last pirate. We learn that the Glot posing as Verkhovtsev was responsible for all the crimes rather than Verkhovtsev himself. And that Glot and Veselchak's suspicious interest in the captain's diaries also made Verkhovtsev suspect our heroes back at the museum, so he went to Buran for help. The two raid into Gromazeka, who Zelyony says is a hooligan, and Buran is like, why? He's so kind and happy. And then they learn from the blue big-eared guy who gave our heroes the Gavarun that the Gavarun had been talking about the Medusa system. Tying up all those loose ends. The heroes make Veselchaku open the trap, then capture him and Glot. As everyone is vibing and chilling now that the mystery has been solved, Alisa asks the captains if they're planning on flying anywhere soon, now that she's like asking to tag along or anything. Her dad's like, you're absolutely asking to tag along. Gromazeka shows up ready to fight these space pirates, but he's obviously a little late. He's like, I'm late? How unlucky I am in life. Can I at least see the last pirate? Buran is like, here you go, but Veselchak is no longer there. He attempts to get the Sklis to fly him away somewhere, fails, and then it gets carried away by the same giant bird that Alisa got carried away by earlier. Also, Gromazeka attempts to shoot at Veselchaku, but then Buran is like, stop, you'll break him. Because she's an egg? I don't know. According to Zelyony, she's bringing her babies a new toy. Then we see the Glot in a cage aboard the Pegasus, flying back to Earth, along with our heroes once again. Selesnyov asks Alisa if she'll have enough to talk about at school. Zelyony yet again is like, what's there to talk about? Nothing went right. We only got a few animals. Alisa says, but we made new friends! And the Gavarun says, a Gavarun is worth a whole zoo. Alisa says that's right, and tells her dad that when she travels with the captains, she'll have so much to bring him. Selesnyov is like, Alisa, you need to go to school. Alisa is like, don't worry, maybe we'll invite you along. An expedition always needs a biologist. Selesnyov says, thanks, Alisa, you're a real friend. And that's the end of the film. So cute! I love this cartoon so much! As shown throughout the film, Tayna Tretьей Planety celebrates the heroism of the working class, scientific discovery, laboring for progress and knowledge rather than for profit, and solidarity and friendship. Our heroes are ordinary people who, when unexpectedly called upon to solve a space mystery, step up simply because they want to help others. Captains Kim and Buran are famous for their contributions to scientific knowledge and their documentation of the different planets and the wildlife they contain. All the labor in this film is done in the name of progress, knowledge, and the betterment of all living beings, human, alien, and animal, rather than for profit or personal glory. Friendship, solidarity, and comradeship form the foundation of this entire story. The heroes succeed in solving the mystery and defeating the space pirates precisely because of their commitment to helping others and their complementary yet differing abilities. When unexpectedly called to action, their deep sense of solidarity with all life forms enables them to answer the call, solve the mystery, and ultimately make the world a better place, with fewer space pirates committing space crimes. Tayna Tretьей Planety is a fantastic representation of the post-scarcity communist future that the Soviet people dreamed of. A future where, much like in the Soviet Union, any ordinary person, even a 9-year-old girl with the strength of 2 men, could become a hero. Where science, progress, cooperation, and comradeship would be valued above all else. Where people would be accepted as they are, even if they're prone to melancholy or pessimism. Where money would be nearly meaningless, and where people would no longer be divided by states or by class. To those of us living today, such optimism for the future might not make sense. And there's a lot of things to be pessimistic about right now, especially given the increasingly common climate disasters, worsening living conditions, escalating repression of the working class, and the like. but in a Soviet context, it made perfect sense. As Anna Louise Strong wrote in her book The Stalin Era, the democratic and technically developed working class of the West left the first building of socialism to an illiterate, technically backward peasant people who knew that they were not ready for the task and yet who built. Of course, the builders of the first ever socialist experiment, who took a backwards feudal peasant nation and turned it into a scientific superpower, had hope for the future. I would guess the majority of the people watching this don't live in a socialist nation, but all of us who want to build a better world should strive to have a little bit of that Soviet optimism for the future that we see in Mystery of the Third Planet. A better world is possible, but first you need to believe, and then you need to use your gifts and work to make it happen. And of course, study revolutionary theory as well as previous successful revolutions and revolutionary organizations, because there can be no revolutionary movement without revolutionary theory. Thanks for watching! This video was made possible by my wonderful patrons on Patreon. If you like my videos, consider joining for early access to ad-free, uncensored videos, behind-the-scenes content, and monthly exclusive patrons-only rant videos that you can help pick the topics of. You can also send me a one-time tip on Ko-fi or PayPal, and remember to like and subscribe and share the video with anyone you think would like it. If you were called to solve a space mystery, would you do it, or would you call a patrol ship from Earth? I think you have what it takes to solve space mysteries. I believe in you. Okay, bye!